Hello and welcome to Medieval Murder, the podcast that brings all things gruesome and historical to the comfort of your own home or car or wherever it is you're listening from. My name is Hannah Purtymun and I'm here with my father Kevin Purtymun to discuss some of the most famous and infamous murders that took place in the medieval and early modern periods. Medieval Murder came to be first as a blog, then as an Instagram, and now as a podcast, after I finished my master's dissertation on homicide in early medieval England. The podcast will feature some of the most famous murders in medieval history, some mini-episode series on different types of medieval murders, and interviews with historians and history enthusiasts alike. Just as a housekeeping update, we've been experiencing some technical difficulties with our sound and are trying out different ways to make everything the best for you, our listeners. We even consulted with a sound engineer, so we're hoping for the best this time. But we would like to thank you for your patience as we get everything fixed up. And now on to the episode. The winner of our Instagram and Twitter poll was Scottish witches, but Catherine de' Medici will still be coming up at a later date. So let's talk about all that black magic that was supposedly hitting up late medieval and early modern Scotland. During the 16th and 17th centuries, Scotland experienced 4 great witch hunts during which 3,141 women and men were accused of witchcraft, but the number of people actually found guilty and put to death is unknown. While there were small pockets of witch trials throughout the medieval period, Scotland experienced great witch hunts in which hundreds of people were accused of practicing witchcraft across the country. Today, however, we will only be talking about the witch hunt of 1590 to 1591. So, all right. Yeah. So, before we get into the witch hunt itself, it is important for us to talk about the political and religious climate in Scotland at this time that led to persecution and the deaths of hundreds of presumably innocent people. King James VI, the son of Mary Queen of Scots, took the throne of Scotland in 1567 and the throne of England and Ireland in 1603. King James VI, who will now be referred to only as James for convenience's sake, first became interested in witchcraft during a voyage to Denmark in 1589. However, it is important to note that witchcraft was actually criminalized in Scotland in 1563 by Scottish Parliament. James was attempting to sail back to Scotland from Denmark in order to bring his new bride, Anne of Denmark, back with him to his kingdom. Storms were so bad during his voyage that he was forced to take shelter in Norway for several weeks. James was convinced that these storms were caused by witches from North Berwick who were trying to murder him, which seems a little far-fetched to me.
How did he come up with North Berwick? I mean, that's pretty exact. It's like he must have had some other motive going there. You know,
that's a good question. But I think at this time there was already some suspicions in that area that probably kind of fueled that fire.
So it's kind of a witch hotspot, and then he just been at Denmark's witch trials.
Yeah.
So, all right.
Yeah. So,
interesting.
I mean, and it's important to note that during this time, suspicion seemed to run rampant. Some Scottish locals believed that the devil was present and was causing terrible storms, killing their livestock, and bringing disease. They also thought that the soldiers of Satan were witches who were doing his bidding. So all of this is kind of fueling that fire of James being like, somebody's trying to kill me, and it's a bunch of witches.
So it was kind of... Did you say it was the standard of the day? If something bad happened to you, you just kind of blame it on the witches? Or
I don't know if it was the standard so much as during this 2-year period for sure, people were like, yes, it's the witches. But before that, okay. And even after that, it, not necessarily.
Well, you said earlier that it had been in law since 1563.
Mm-hmm.
So, and you said that there was 4 great witch hunt periods. Is this the start of it, or what?
I mean, there was some earlier ones that were not as large. So this is one of the first big ones in Scotland. There's definitely other ones throughout Europe earlier than this.
Right. Now, is this the first one we see in Scotland where the king's like getting involved?
I believe so, yes.
So James was the king of England at this point.
Yes.
And it was, but where was his residence? Was it in Scotland or was it down in England?
At this
Just
point,
curious.
it would be in Scotland, and then in 1603, he also takes the throne in London.
Okay.
Yeah. So, due to this apprehension already present in Scotland at the time, James took the potential threat relatively seriously. If these so-called witches were a threat to him, they could take his throne and his country from him, along with his life. While James was in Norway, he heard about the Copenhagen witch trials, which occurred in July of 1590, at the end of which 2 women were burned at the stake. During this period, witch hunts were taking place in other places throughout Europe as well, including in Burgundy, Italy, Switzerland, and Germany. So, one of the first great witch hunts occurred from 1590 to 1591, when James VI returned to Scotland. This witch hunt was isolated in North Berwick and East Lothian, Scotland. On October 31st, 1590, Halloween night, several people were accused of witchcraft. By the end of this initial witch hunt, around 60 and up to 70 people were accused of witchcraft.
Wow, that's a lot. I mean, when you consider, like today, North Berwick and East Lothian, you'd be like, yeah, 70's not that much. But there couldn't have been that many people living there to accuse 70 of witchcraft.
I think today 70 would be pretty high up there in the area, of witchcraft.
Well, well, I'm not saying of witchcraft in general, but I'm just saying, when you're talking like crime and stuff, you're usually talking about like maybe 10, maybe 5% of the population.
Well, and especially when you're thinking of like in the scheme of things, in the 4 great witch hunts in Scotland, a little over 3,000 people were accused. And so, 70 is pretty big for this little area.
Right. And then when you think of 3,000, that's per population, that seems like a lot of witches running around up there.
Yeah, so everybody's scared.
The other thing is, how long, you said it was Halloween night?
Yes, it was.
How long has Halloween been going on? I thought it was pretty much a commercial operation created for us, by us, I don't know.
No, it definitely started earlier than that. It was, All Hallows Eve. So we can actually go into that in our Halloween episode if you'd like. We could do.
Yeah, I'm just wondering.
I have something else special planned, just as a hint for the group, or our small group of listeners, who are sticking along for the ride. But we can also go over that as like a mini add-on.
Just a request from me. I'm just kind of wondering, at what point does the Kit Kat bar show up at Halloween?
I think that was probably the 1900s, probably probably 1990s is my guess. I don't know how long the Kit Kat's been around.
I don't know if we may have to look it up. Anyway, we digress.
Anyway.
So we got 70 people accused of witchcraft on one night.
Yes.
In East Lothian and North Berwick.
Yes.
Okay. We're going to talk a little bit about what they were allegedly doing?
Yes. So,
okay.
Those accused, whose names we know for certain, include Agnes Samson, Barbara Napier, Dr. Fian, Euphem MacCalzian, Gellis Duncan, Robert Grierson, Lynette Bandelandis, the porter's wife of Seaton, the smith of Bridge Hollis, the wife of George Mott, and Alanis Muir.
All right, we got a list of some folks there.
One of the reasons that they were accused of witchcraft was because of a small church in North Berwick where their covens were said to meet to dance and summon the devil. This small church was St. Andrew's Kirk, which was located right on the seafront, the perfect location to summon storms. One of the rumors...
So this isn't St. Andrew's that we know of today.
No, this is just St. Andrew's Kirk, so it's just a little church called that. It's not like St. Andrew's is much farther north.
Okay.
Yeah. So one of the rumors that was going around at the time was that a witch or a group of witches sailed into the Firth of Forth, the river running outside of Edinburgh, and proceeded to summon the storm that derailed King James. This story is actually what supposedly served as the inspiration for the witches in Shakespeare's Macbeth.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. So they were summoning storms from the sea.
Yeah.
Okay.
Once they were accused, the supposed witches, mostly women, were rounded up and imprisoned in either North Berwick or in Edinburgh. Many of these people were then subjected to terrible torture techniques in an attempt to get them to confess to their crimes. These torture techniques included the breast ripper and the scold's bridle.
Whoa. Okay, okay.
Yeah.
None of that sounds... I would admit to being a witch, I'm thinking. I'm not... Just from the sound of the first one.
Yeah.
Yep, I'm a witch.
The breast ripper would be attached to the victim's chest with 4 pronged levers and then tear the victim's breast from her body. The scold's bridle would be used on accused witches who were awaiting trial. It was a metal cage that was placed around their head with a metal piece that would slip into their mouth, making it impossible for them to talk. Of those accused...
So how are they going to confess if they've got a metal thing in their mouth?
I think it's probably very heavy. It's like this metal cage around your head. It was also, a lot of times, especially during these trials, attached to a wall so they couldn't move around, like chained to a wall. And so I think it probably, exhausted them, and then, you take it off and make them confess.
And they also couldn't do any summoning of the devil or spells,
Yeah, that's true. That's a good point. They can't supposedly do any of that stuff if they can't talk. Of those accused, many of them confessed to witchcraft, most likely due to the terrible torture they were forced to bear.
Oh, I totally get that.
Oh, yeah.
Just,
Yeah.
But
Agnes Samson was one of the women accused of witchcraft during the Great Witch Hunt of 1590 to 1591 by Gellis Duncan. So Gellis Duncan is one of the other women accused of witchcraft, and she's throwing words over to Agnes Samson, being like, she's a witch.
I think it was like trying to make a deal.
Maybe.
I'll give somebody up, let me go.
Maybe. Or maybe she accused under torture, I don't know.
Maybe she just didn't like Agnes very much.
That could be too. Agnes was a midwife in East Lothian who was also known as the Wise Wife of Keith, because she was a well-known healer in the area. After being arrested, Agnes was tortured using the scold's bridle and did confess to being a witch. After she confessed, her entire body was shaved, and the examiners found a witch's mark, which was probably a mole or a wart, which then supposedly proved she was a witch.
No.
Yeah.
I'm in trouble. I got several moles.
Agnes confessed more specifically to calling a storm onto the Firth of Forth, resulting in several deaths, as well as to calling the storm that prevented King James VI from arriving in Scotland. She also said that the devil had come to her and she had agreed to work for him because she was a poor widow with children. Agnes was actually questioned by the King of Scotland himself, and her confession included knowing things that had been said on the king's wedding night that she could not have known without the help of the devil.
Ooh. Which
I think is an interesting, plot twist. Because he did this, he went and he questioned her because he initially didn't believe she was a witch. And then she told him this stuff that was said on his wedding night. And he was like, oh my God, she's a witch.
That is kind of weird.
Yeah.
I mean, is she clairvoyant? I don't
know. Or is she a witch? We don't know.
Sounded like we're getting some evidence that she is in connection with the supernatural, maybe.
Maybe. Or maybe somebody just whispered that in her ear and she was like, all right. On the 28th of January, 1591, Agnes Samson was convicted of being a witch and taken to the scaffold on Castle Hill in Edinburgh. She was garroted and then burned at the stake. And then, for some reason, there's also a legend that Agnes's bald ghost roams the grounds of Holyrood Palace.
Oh, so you spent some time in Edinburgh. Did you ever go down to the palace grounds at night and see if you could see Agnes?
I did not. Didn't see a bald lady running around.
Interesting.
Yeah, might be something we do the next trip.
Hopefully we won't get in trouble, but...
Yeah. One of the other people accused of witchcraft was John Fian, who was a schoolmaster in East Lothian. John Fian was also accused by Gellis Duncan, who we will discuss in a minute.
Wait, I thought he had been. So now they're just accusing each other.
Well, no, this is still Gellis Duncan who accused the First Lady, who accused Agnes.
Okay.
So John actually confessed to witchcraft after having his fingernails pulled out and iron rods pushed into their place, which is called pillywinks. That's the torture.
Called what?
Pillywinks.
That does not sound bad.
It doesn't sound bad, the pillywinks, but
No.
it's bad.
Yeah, it does. I mean, it's. Yeah.
That's not a good name for that.
No.
No. He also had his feet crushed until he could no longer stand. So, somebody doing that, even if somebody just ripped out my fingernails, I'd be like, okay, I'm a witch. All done. No more of this.
Yeah.
John confessed first to bewitching someone into lunacy for several days in a row. This was then proved when the same man was brought before King James VI, and John bewitched him again, causing him to scream, jump, cry, and twist about for an hour, after which time he, awoke and had no memory of the event.
It could be the guy was an epileptic.
It could be that, or my guess is that he, didn't like John Fian and was like, I'm gonna do this stuff so that he gets burned at the stake.
Yeah, but John Fian said that he'd bewitched him before. I don't know.
That's true.
That's kind of weird.
Or maybe during these trials, everybody gets kind of caught up in the hysteria, and they're, just playing a part.
Yeah, it could be a lot of groupthink going on.
Yeah. Yeah. John also confessed that after renouncing Satan at his trial the day before, the devil had come to him in his prison cell dressed all in black with a white wand and tried to get him to commit to working for the devil again. However, John claimed he renounced Satan again to his face, which I think is a bold move.
That is a bold move.
Yeah.
I mean...
It also didn't save him by saying he renounced Satan, because John Fian was convicted of witchcraft and taken to Castle Hill in Edinburgh on January 27th, 1591. He was placed in a cart, strangled, and then burnt at the stake.
Okay, so we've got the lady that was garroted and then burned at the stake, and now this guy's strangled. I mean, when you really think about it, like a lot of the older movies, the executioner, they're chopping someone's head off or they put someone in a guillotine. But I mean, and that's personal, but
yeah.
strangling someone, that's really personal.
It is.
Is garroted,
Yeah. Well, I think it's interesting that they do that and then, because it's not just a hanging.
Right.
Because then they burn them.
Right. And, at least, I guess in one sense, at least they killed them before they burned them. They didn't burn them alive.
Yeah, but I mean, in all the movies, you hear them being burned alive, so I think it's interesting that they're not actually burned alive. I don't know if some of them are, in other areas.
They might be.
Yeah.
Just tortured and...
Yeah.
And then burned.
Yeah, it could be. Could be. The last witch we'll be discussing is Gellis Duncan, who accused both Agnes Samson and John Fian of witchcraft, even though she was supposedly a witch herself. Gellis Duncan was a young, probably teenage servant of David Seaton in East Lothian. Gellis was a very good servant for a while, until she suddenly began sneaking out at night and supposedly became quite the healer. David Seaton did not...
So... this David Seaton, did he have standing? Was he kind of a deal? He had a servant. Was he kind of an aristocrat? Or?
Probably, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, he had some sort of power in the area. David Seaton did not trust her and had her tortured until she confessed to witchcraft. And then, under this torture, she accused many others of witchcraft as well, most likely due to the torture. So he just was like, I don't trust her. She's sneaking out at night, and now she can suddenly heal people. She has all these, she can make healing potions and stuff, and all of a sudden, it's weird. And he just has her tortured.
But she's a teenager and she's sneaking out at night. I mean...
Yeah, she was probably just
like
meeting friends or a boyfriend or something.
Right. And I mean, and maybe she picked up some good apothecary stuff on the way. I don't know.
Yeah, but maybe that was just one of her interests. And she got tortured for it. Yeah. So Gellis Duncan was also taken to Castle Hill in Edinburgh to be executed, right before which she retracted her accusations of other witches. So she gets taken to Castle Hill, she's about to be executed, and she's like, they are not witches, I said it under torture, do not kill them. And they killed them anyway.
So Castle Hill, it seems like, might be a ghost hotspot. I mean...
Yeah, you would think.
3 people killed there. I can kind of see, where she's trying to make things right.
Yeah.
But I guess it was already in motion.
Yeah. Yeah. So now this was just the first of several great witch hunts in Scotland. If there is more interest, we will continue this series and talk about other witch hunts as well. But I think this is a really good introduction to spooky season because now it's almost October.
It is almost October. And then, so other witches, other witch hotspots, was Ireland ever a witch hotspot?
Good question. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, they seem like they might have been a little more pagan than Scotland at times.
Yeah, but not in the 1500s.
No, but I mean, just a longer, more well-known history of it, I think.
I don't know if it's more well-known, but...
Or maybe it's just my reading.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, well, I can definitely look into that and see if there's some witch hunts happening in Ireland. That one's probably a little bit less like great witch hunt and more like one witch at a time situation.
Okay. Yeah, these were like 70 rounded up.
Yeah.
I wonder if they convicted all 70.
It doesn't look like there's any documentation about how many of them were killed.
But we know these 3 for sure.
Yes, these 3 for sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. So thank you for listening to Medieval Murder. If you have any listener questions, comments, or topic suggestions, please feel free to reach out via our Twitter account @MurderMedieval, our Instagram account @MedievalMurder, or via email at info.medievalmurder@gmail.com. And if any of you are interested in rocking some Medieval Murder merchandise, take a look at our website, medievalmurder.org. Tune in later for our next podcast.
You know that the last shirt that you guys came out with, it's got kind of a Halloween flair to it.
It does.
It really does.
It does.
It's got a Halloween flair. I like it.
Yeah.
So, anyway, just merch.
Think about rocking that for Halloween.
If you're looking for some Halloween wear, check out the site. Little merch, throw it out there.
Yeah. And thank you for sticking around, everybody.